Welcome back to another FPL video and podcast. This will be the best wildcard team for Game Week 14. The deadlines are coming thick and fast, and so are the videos here, so you're well prepared, not just for Game Week 14, but also in the long term in this hectic Christmas schedule, and also for UCL Fantasy. There will be more videos and deadline streams for that fantasy format too. On screen you can see Drafthound's recommendation for the wildcard team on the left-hand side, and they even had Joe Gomez in this team on the Saturday. So before we even knew about Joe Gomez starting against Liverpool, they actually predicted Joe Gomez to start and they had him in the wildcard team, just like I did when I was building this provisional squad for this video. They've gone for Fabianski, Gabriel, Pedro Porro, Gvardiol, Salah, Saka, Odegaard, Kluivert, Mitoma, Cunha, Evanilson, with Kelleher, Joao Pedro, Wan-Bissaka and Van Dijk on the bench. They will make some changes, I think, before the deadline, so keep your eyes peeled for their predicted points and how they fluctuate, but they are very consistent in terms of some of the best assets in the game, and they've made some great recommendations for my squad, and that has resulted in a lot of points gained since last season. Check the link in the description below for Drafthound. You won't regret it. It's a very fun tool to use for FPL, and I'll also show you FPL Team, a great website that allows you to visualize future game weeks at the very end of this video to provide you a definitive 11 for this best wildcard team, and also the captaincy options for the upcoming deadline. But without further ado, let's jump straight into it. My squad value is approximately 103 million, but it will be different for everybody watching in terms of how much value you have tied up in certain players, maybe selling prices and all of that. So that's why in each position, I'll talk about the best players, even at more expensive and cheaper price points, just so you have the full coverage for Game Week 14 and beyond. Whether you're using the wildcard, where of course this video will be helpful, but even for those non-wildcarders, you can identify the best fixture swings and also the timing of certain players, when to bring them in. That's what this kind of wildcard segment every single week shows you, because it's really important to buy these players at the exact game week. Of course, sometimes it can't really go according to plan and football is full of surprises, but that is my aim with these wildcard videos. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new if you enjoy all of my content, and check all the links in the description below. But let's start off with the two goalkeepers. Over the last couple of weeks, I've highlighted several goalkeepers in terms of that pool, that very exclusive club of the best goalkeepers to buy. Robert Sanchez has been mentioned so many times. The same goes for Verbruggen, Onana and David Raya. The way I'd currently rank it would be Sanchez in first, Raya second, Verbruggen third and Onana fourth. Timing once again is very crucial, and Sanchez faces Southampton away next and has brilliant fixtures until January, and Chelsea could go on a great run here. They're also facing a Saints side without some key players like Tyler Dibbling, and I think Chelsea will get a few goals and perhaps keep another clean sheet, just like they did against Aston Villa in Game Week 13. Now, I don't think there has been a particular standout in goals so far this season. The three best options have been Sales, Onana and Robert Sanchez, but with the upcoming fixtures in mind and recent form, I think the Spaniard might be the best option as your main goalkeeper. He's also at a good price point at 4.7 million, and the ownership isn't too shabby at around 11%. I actually discussed him in the recent Transfers podcast, so be sure to check that out as well. The backup goalkeeper will remain Fabianski, but we've got another option at a similar price with Fraser Forster, so you have an option now when you're picking your second goalkeeper. But I'd say the 0.2 million with Fabianski, who has better fixtures, and I also don't think Spurs will keep that many clean sheets anyway, with Vicario missing several months of Premier League action. So I'm going to stick with the same kind of template here over the last couple of weeks with Robert Sanchez and Fabianski. From my point of view, it's not the easiest of game weeks to kind of decide the best defensive line, because I think for certain teams like Brighton, they've got Fulham away this week. I don't expect a clean sheet, and I think it's kind of awkward to pick that fourth and fifth defender. I'm only going for Aït-Nouri for two reasons. For one, Wolves have brilliant fixtures over the next 4 game weeks, then it gets extremely tough, just like we saw at the beginning of this season. But I think the most important reason that Aït-Nouri kind of features in this team again is the goal and assist threat, which has been lacking ever since many of us brought him in against Southampton, where he did keep a clean sheet. It has been downhill ever since, but that is really the main appeal with Aït-Nouri. He can bomb down that left wing. In recent matches, he has played as a left centre-back, so hopefully that does change. And I do think a clean sheet or two is possible over the next 4, but they were battered by Bournemouth with 3 penalties conceded, and that causes a lot of concern there. And Wolves are near the bottom of the table for a reason, but I still think Aït-Nouri is worth keeping for those that have some value tied up in him. Otherwise, you could argue it's not really worth investment at 4.9 million. But at a similar price, I'd highly recommend Joe Gomez, who started alongside Virgil van Dijk in their 2-0 victory against Manchester City. And when Quansah came on for Trent Alexander-Arnold, it was actually Quansah being a direct replacement for the young Liverpool player. It wasn't Joe Gomez shifting to right back like we all thought. Now, this could change over the next few weeks, but I think Gomez is slightly ahead of Quansah in the pecking order. A lot of these Liverpool websites and also pages did predict Joe Gomez to start. I also said the same thing in my recent podcast. It's a bit of a shame because Quansah is only 3.9 million, and that would be an absolute bargain in FPL. But at 4.8, you're covering the best defence in the Premier League right now for the table toppers in Liverpool. And if you got the money, Virgil van Dijk might be worth it. He had several chances to get on the score sheet against Manchester City, but Joe Gomez offers the best value for money at this moment in time. He does have a few injury problems over the last couple of years. Hopefully he stays injury free whilst Konate is out for the next 5 to 6 weeks. I think Gomez is a great acquisition for your FPL teams. I'd also go for the yellow flagged Gabriel, who scored and assisted in the first half against West Ham in that 5-2 victory. Arsenal have been a bit shaky defensively this season, but ever since the recent international break, they beat Nottingham Forest 3-0 and they scored 5 goals against Sporting and West Ham, so they're back on track and they're the only team right now that could possibly put the pressure on Liverpool, who are flying at the top, 9 points clear of the competition. And I think Gabriel and Van Dijk are the best defenders in FPL at the moment, but you can cover Liverpool defensively with Joe Gomez. And with Arsenal, David Raya in goal, as mentioned before, and Jurrien Timber is looking very dynamic as the right back for the Gunners. And it's worth mentioning again that Ben White is injured for 3 to 4 months, so Jurrien Timber, if he can stay fit, should be quite nailed on in that Arsenal defence. You've also got Saliba and Calafiori, so plenty of options to cover Arsenal defensively. But I'm going to go for another budget defender in Van Hecke, and if you go for Colwill, I'd also probably go for Verbruggen in goal. I don't like doubling up on either Brighton or Chelsea defensively. In fact, the only 2 teams in the Premier League I'd advocate a defensive double-up are Liverpool and Arsenal. That's the way I see it. I think they're by far the most reliable teams defensively, especially with the fixtures in mind. But Nottingham Forest have also been excellent so far. It's just a shame that their fixtures now turn for the worse and they're bottom of the fixture difficulty rating until Gameweek 18. Van Hecke won't really get you any big returns, or at least it's not going to happen very often. And if he keeps a clean sheet, you'll most likely get 6 points, but he is the safest Brighton asset in this position. I actually bought Veltman as a very late deadline stream transfer, and that went swimmingly. It was a great transfer, and I'm so happy about it. But Van Hecke does save you a little bit of money compared to Veltman and Estupiñán, and I don't think rotation will be an issue. Lewis Dunk came on as a substitute against Southampton in that 1-1 draw, but I think Dunk would replace Igor Julio in the starting 11, and Van Hecke would remain as a very crucial component of that Brighton defence. But let's now go for an attacking option in Milos Kerkez, who scored in that 4-2 victory against Wolves, and he also got an assist very recently, in fact a couple of assists against Manchester City. So at 4.4 million, you can't go wrong here. You might also want to consider Lewis Hall, who I discussed quite a lot in recent videos. I still think he's decent, but there's not a particular standout at this price and below. And if I'm kind of investing in a sub 5 million defender, or under should I say, I think Joe Gomez is probably the one I take a punt on right now. And in terms of normal transfers, I'm not that infused about Van Hecke, Kerkez, or Aït-Nouri, and you may want to go for Colwill instead for those that don't have Robert Sanchez. But with this defensive line, you've got a bit of everything. Saves potential with Robert Sanchez and bonus points. You can get the goals from Gabriel and even Aït-Nouri. And with Kerkez, the odd assist here and there. I don't think Bournemouth will get many clean sheets, but you're going to target the fixtures with this kind of pick. And also with Van Hecke, the fixtures until Gameweek 18 are excellent, and Joe Gomez can be a very good acquisition at 4.8 million, a massive differential, playing in the best defence in the Premier League. Another player I highlighted in the Transfer Tips podcast is Jarrod Bowen. I think he's worth buying with normal transfers, even possibly for a hit, and especially on the wild card. If you're looking for an Mbeumo replacement, look no further than Jarrod Bowen as a medium-term punt, because the next 5 fixtures look fantastic for West Ham. The only downside to Leicester City away next is that they've got a new manager in Ruud van Nistelrooy, so we could see a managerial bounce, but West Ham could still score 2 or 3 goals in the process, and Kudus is now back from suspension, so both Bowen and Kudus would be decent punts over the next 5 game weeks. After that, it gets a bit tough for the Hammers once again, and they're a very inconsistent team. They basically let Arsenal just do what they wanted in the first half, but then they beat Newcastle away very recently. So they're a kind of Jekyll and Hyde team, just like Tottenham Hotspur, two sides from London. But I think Bowen is an extremely consistent FPL asset on his day, and he could build a nice run over the next 5 game weeks. Next up, though, there are no doubts about this pick, Mohamed Salah. There are some people talking about selling him to go to Erling Haaland now and kind of chase the upside. I would not recommend doing that whatsoever. He just seems to be gifted chances by opponents every single game week, and he capitalizes on the vast majority of them. He has been by far the best FPL asset so far this season. Only the likes of Saka and Palmer can get somewhat close, but I think Salah is levels above them in FPL. He's got 11 goals as well, so only Erling Haaland is above him in the goal scoring charts, and he's really reduced that deficit over the last 2 months. So I think Salah is definitely worth holding on to on the wildcard. And if you don't have him, what are you waiting for? The kind of argument against is, I've lost out on so many points already, let me play FPL a different way. And fair enough, you can thrive without Salah. I don't think anybody is essential, but if any player is kind of close to that term this season, I think unfortunately it would be the Egyptian, who has been outstanding once again. I'd also go for Bukayo Saka, who has delivered 31 points in the last 2 game weeks ever since I highlighted him as a buy back in game week 12. He is a great pick at the moment, and he's got the high ceiling to boot. And Arsenal are overperforming a little bit with their XG. They are creating a lot of big chances, and they look much more fluid, but they are kind of catching teams off guard right now, just like they did in the second half of last season when they battered teams very consistently. Let's see if they keep this up against Man United up next, which won't be easy, then Fulham away. Arsenal just need to get it going game after game, keep focused, and Saka is by far the best Arsenal asset in the attack. And my personal preference in terms of tripling up on Arsenal would be Raya, Gabriel, and Saka. You might even argue Timber in the defensive line. Havertz and Odegaard are good FPL options, and they can cover Saka to a certain extent, but I think if you've got the money, just go for Saka, and you'll get more double-digit hauls, more goal contributions, and he might even be on course to break Premier League records like the most assists in a single season. Obviously, Thierry Henry and De Bruyne hold the record with 20, and Saka has already halved that. Let's see if it can get double over the next 25 games or so. But let's get into the other areas of the pitch. Another premium midfielder in Cole Palmer, who got a goal and an assist against Aston Villa and 14 points to boot. He was actually recommended as a purchase in last week's Transfers podcast, despite the poor form recently with 4 blanks in the last 5 matches, but that has obviously come to an end, and he faces Southampton away next. He will be right on the agenda for the captaincy, and it's always difficult picking between Saka and Palmer. I think generally speaking, since last season, Palmer would be slightly better, especially for the captaincy, but this season it's neck and neck, and Saka only narrowly leads in that debate despite missing 1 game against Bournemouth away. Ultimately, you'd want both of them in your FPL team alongside Mohamed Salah, and I think these 3 are the best FPL options at this moment in time. But the 5th and final midfielder might be a surprising one, but I'm going to keep Morgan Rogers here as a budget option. But you can also go for Kluivert if you want to go for a massive differential. I do prefer Semenyo over the Dutchman though, and you've also got Buonanotte and Smith Rowe as budget midfielders if you want this player to rotate with your other 4 midfielders and 3 forwards. And I think Rogers has excellent fixtures coming up. Aston Villa are winless in 8 matches, a very similar run to Man City, who haven't won in the last 7 games across all competitions. But I think Aston Villa will get back on track, and Morgan Rogers will be crucial. Matheus Cunha has been brilliant in the past month with so many returns. He's been one of my best transfers this season, but he blanked against Bournemouth. These things happen. I think those that maybe moved Strand Larsen onto Cunha, especially for a hit, they'll be fuming, and sometimes need a bit of luck when you do make these transfers. And I still think Cunha is the better option overall. He has shown it over a long period of time, but there are so many options in the forward line this season with Strand Larsen. Raul Jimenez at one stage was very promising. Delap, Jamie Vardy is okay. I wouldn't recommend him now, but he has been doing okay early in the season. You've also got Joao Pedro, Welbeck, and many more that I'm going to discuss in this video and in future podcasts. But I'd still go for Cunha. I think it's worth having this player for the bonus points, the goals and the assists, and the upcoming fixtures. But beware, after the next 4, Wolves have a terrible run, and you may want to sell Cunha around game week 18 or 19. But for the time being, I think he's worth investment. Even if you've missed some of his big returns recently, he's probably got 1 or 2 more left at least during this plum fixture run. And during the difficult games, he can deliver He showed it at the beginning of this season, and he can score or assist against anybody in the Premier League. Next up will be João Pedro, who was very disappointing against Southampton and didn't really do much in the entire game. He was subbed off early once again, and I don't think it's clear-cut between João Pedro or Welbeck. I'd probably lean towards the Brazilian because of the high ceiling and the goal and assist potential at the same time to deliver 12 plus points, but I think Welbeck is absolutely fine. You can also go for him and really target these Brighton fixtures. You might also want to go for Mitoma in the midfield, which I discussed in recent videos too, and if you've got the funds, you may want to go for Mitoma instead of Rodgers, but I'm going for João Pedro here. He is still my favourite Brighton attacker, but it's very close between him and Welbeck, as I mentioned, and this is something I'll probably deviate between over the next couple of weeks, and honestly, it could come down to a coin toss. But the final forward is Nicholas Jackson. Just like Aït-Nouri, he has 1 yellow card away from suspension, and you've got a long period of time until the threshold increases from 5 yellow cards to 10, and that will be after Gameweek 19. But Jackson has done in the past where he's walking that tightrope for the suspension, and he ends up somehow surviving and not getting suspended. So that will be the hope here, and he does face Southampton away next. He is a great captaincy shout, and he's probably my favourite forward in the game right now. The only problem is the suspension risk. And you've also got Isak if he's available. I still like him a lot, and there are so many forwards in this game that you can pick, but Jackson might be the very best at this moment in time. The best way to plan an FPL is by using the website fpl.team to visualise future game weeks. I've gone for Robert Sanchez in goal, facing Southampton away, and a back three of Aït-Nouri, Gabriel and Van Hecke. That's not ideal, and one thing you might want to do is start Joe Gomez over Van Hecke. That is the only 50-50 call, in my opinion. Jarrod Bowen, Saka, Palmer and Salah will be the undoubted and undisputed midfield four. João Pedro, Jackson and Cunha complete the front line with Fabianski, Rodgers, Van Hecke and Kerkez on the bench. That would be my provisional Gameweek 14 lineup with this wildcard team. Palmer as the captain and Salah as the vice, but even Saka, Bowen and Jackson would be right up there for the captaincy. And if I had to highlight one differential captain this week, it would be Nicholas Jackson. I'm very bullish on him. Now, sometimes I'll get this right and sometimes I won't, but Jackson is such a consistent player for Chelsea over the last season, and he's been improving every single week. The expected points is only 54, and there's 0.4 million left in the bank for me personally, and that basically means this team costs roughly 102.6 million, but you could make a few other changes here and there. If you've got even more money, as mentioned earlier, Mitoma instead of Rodgers could be brilliant, even if you're not too enthused about a Brighton triple up. You might also want to go for Timber instead of Gabriel, and other goalkeepers include Raya, Onana and Verbruggen, but I would rank Sanchez higher than all of them at this moment in time. Virgil van Dijk in the defensive line is another brilliant option, and he's got the goal threat, and he was very close to scoring against Man City. I think the narrative would be very different, but I'm very happy about Joe Gomez. He's a nice punt whilst Konate is out. And in terms of other defenders instead of Aït-Nouri, you might want to consider Lewis Hall still, but not to start this week against Liverpool. Mazraoui was subbed off before 60 minutes against Everton in that 4-0 win, which is so frustrating. We saw that with Dalot very recently too, but I think with defenders, it's kind of very difficult to pick that 4th and 5th option right now, but things will become much clearer over the next couple of weeks. I'm certainly very bullish on a Chelsea defender like Colwill, Gabriel, either Van Dijk or Joe Gomez, and I think the rest is definitely up in the air, but I'm very happy about this midfield. You might also want to go for Bruno Fernandes, and don't forget Ollie Watkins up front. We have so many options in each position this season, and that's the beauty of it. It means less of a template and more creativity, and also just a difference in all of our teams, and we will see how things turn out by the end of the season. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Our aim is to get this video to the 200 likes on YouTube and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 31,000 subscribers. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks, the Discord server, FPL League, Drafthound, as well as Spotify. Follow me on that platform and leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting my channel. Keep your eyes peeled for the Gameweek 14 team selection, all the UCL fantasy content, and the deadline streams where I'm looking to give 10 memberships as well. Enjoy the football and also keep on progressing in Fantasy Premier League. Don't let it get to you if you are doing poorly, and let's see what's in store for us over the Christmas period.